foe to take to the court in a regular NBA season game. This is the Daily Report. Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report exactly 2 weeks from Election Day. Early voting kicked off in 4 more states Tuesday, including in battleground Wisconsin. Former President Barack Obama joined Governor and Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz for a rally in the Badger State. Vice President Kamala Harris was not physically on the campaign trail, but she did tape 2 media interviews in Washington, one with Telemundo and one with NBC, where she had a rare discussion about gender politics.
Do you not see sexism as a factor in this race at all?
I don't think of it that way. My challenge is the challenge of making sure I can talk with and listen to as many voters as possible and earn their vote. And I will never assume that anyone in our country should elect a leader based on their gender or their race.
Former President Donald Trump used his time on the campaign trail to attack his opponent, lobbing personal insults at her during a roundtable in Florida with Latino voters.
I was going to hit her really hard on the trail today, but now I don't have to because she's off. She's off. No, I can't get over it. Who the hell takes off? You have 14 days left, and she'll take a couple of more days off, too. You know why? She's lazy as hell, and she's got that reputation.
CBS News political director Finn Gomez and CBS News campaign reporter Libby Cathy join me now. Finn is in D.C. tracking the Harris campaign. Libby is following Trump in Greensboro, North Carolina. So, Libby, in addition to calling Harris lazy, Trump said numerous times she had a low IQ this coming days after he used an expletive to describe her. Has there been backlash or concern from the camp over his choice of language to describe his opponent?
Yeah, good to see you, Lindsay. Absolutely, there are those in Trump's camp who want to see him steer away from this language, who don't want to hear him question the intelligence of Vice President Kamala Harris, worried that this could hurt him with suburban women who have not yet made a decision on who to vote for. However, there are also those in Trump's camp who say, let Trump be Trump, and they think this type of rhetoric motivates his base. So with 2 weeks to go, I've been to many of Trump's rallies in the last month. He doesn't seem to be slowing this down. He seems to question Kamala Harris' intelligence at every single one of his events. So we'll probably hear that today in Greensboro when he takes the stage in a little under an hour.
Finn, it's not often that Harris discusses identity politics. She was asked about it on NBC. Why do you think she largely avoids it, and what do you make of how she responded to that question?
Well, Lindsay, I think that there are some in Harris' world who believe that she should make that more, the fact that she could be the first woman president, the first woman of color president, that she should make that more center of her pitch to voters, especially in this last stretch before the November 5th election. However, essentially, the Harris campaign strategy is to have as wide as a berth as possible when it comes to their coalition, and they really want to focus on Trump and make it about essentially a referendum on Trump. And if they expand that and they use maybe that 2016 model, if you remember, Lindsay, in 2016, Hillary Clinton made sort of this historic component of her candidacy central to her candidacy, and it sort of backfired. At least there's some who say that that's what occurred in 2016. So really, their focus right now is Trump. Is to target Trump and to target the character component of Trump, and also make it a referendum on the former president.
Well, Libby, Trump is reportedly set to sit down for an interview on one of the country's top podcasts, The Joe Rogan Experience. Is this more of the so-called bro vote that he's going after, or is there another strategy?
Yeah, Lindsay, it's a little bit of both. Joe Rogan is the world's most famous, highest paid podcaster. Absolutely has that young male audience that Trump is going after. But a lot of other people listen to Joe Rogan. So I think this is about Trump trying to expand his reach here in the final 2 weeks. And you've seen some of these more authentic moments, the campaign says, come from Trump sitting down with these podcasters like Theo Vaughn a few months ago. So absolutely, this is trying to get that young male vote. But a lot of other people listen to Joe Rogan as well. He's going to be taping that on Friday in Austin, Texas. I'll also note that Vice President Kamala Harris will also be in Texas on Friday. She's going to have a rally to gin up support for abortion rights, trying to make that a top issue with 2 weeks to go here, Lindsay.
Finn, there were some whispers briefly that Harris might also appear on the Joe Rogan Experience. So far, that hasn't come to fruition. But with Trump and this apparent push to rally the young male voter bloc, is Harris missing out on a key demographic?
I think there's something to say that she is. I mean, look, the bro vote, as it has been so eloquently put, the bro vote is a key component to Donald Trump's campaign. It is. He is trying to appeal to that vote, to the young male voter, and there is that huge gender gap, that historic gender gap that we're seeing between these two campaigns. However, we have seen Vice President Harris go into places where it necessarily may not have the most friendly audiences. We did see her sit down for an interview with Fox News, and there are a lot of folks in her campaign and supporters who believe that she did well in that interview. And I think as we just heard by Libby, look, if she goes on the Joe Rogan show, she has the ability to reach, tens of millions, potentially tens of millions of viewers that she typically would not reach in this last stretch. Why not? Why not reach out to those? And it's a battle of margins, as you know, Lindsay, in these 7 battleground states. So that's why it's so key to reach out to the biggest, largest swath of the electorate that you can muster.
Ben Gomez and Libby Cathy, thank you. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel Tuesday as the U.S. pushes for de-escalation in the Middle East. Blinken met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials in Jerusalem. His trip comes days after the Israeli military said it killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in southern Gaza. Blinken addressed the impact of Sinwar's death while meeting with Israel's president.
I believe very much that the death of Sinwar does create an important opportunity to bring the hostages home, to bring the war to an end, and to ensure Israel's security.
Across the northern border, Israel is actively engaged in combat with Iran-backed Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. CBS News foreign correspondent Rami Inocencio is following the latest from Tel Aviv.
Lindsay, hi there. This is the 11th visit for Secretary of State Antony Blinken here to Israel in the past 12 months, ever since the Hamas terror attacks of October 7th. And we have been here before. This, again, is a rally by the families and supporters of hostages still held in Israel to try to apply pressure on Washington to finally bring the hostages still left in Gaza home. Speaking with some of the people here, there's a mix of feelings of desperation by some that not enough has been done. There's cynicism that not enough will be done, but there is still hope that remains among these people because, frankly, that is all that many of them feel that they have in the absence of any kind of action from Israel or from Washington. Now, Antony Blinken spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today, reportedly for about 2.5 hours, ostensibly about some potential kind of ceasefire, a ceasefire that has been elusive over the past year, but that will hopefully bring the hostages home. Those hostages are believed to be about 100 alive and dead. But arguably, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now has the upper hand. Israel fairly successfully has defended itself from attacks on October 1st from Iran, and since then Israel has killed both the leader of Hezbollah and the leader of Hamas. But a ceasefire, again, has been elusive, and it continues to be elusive. It would very much be a surprise to anyone here if there were a breakthrough that happened of some kind, because we've also seen that Israel has opened up already a second front in the war with Lebanon, and there is an expected Israeli retaliation against Iran. After Blinken's visit here, he is expected to carry on in the Mideast. He's expected to stay here in the Mideast, going on to Qatar and Jordan. Lindsay.
Rami Inocencio, thank you. Let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie Daggett at the Pentagon for more. Charlie, on Monday, we discussed the alleged leak of classified documents regarding Israel's plans to strike Iran. The FBI has since announced it's investigating. What more do we know about the U.S. response to this apparent leak?
So, Lindsay, we learned today that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, has contacted his counterpart, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, over the leak. We're told that, as you said, while the FBI is leading the investigation, the Pentagon says they are working closely with the FBI. Asked whether the DOD has done anything to shut down any further leaks or whether they've determined the source, the spokesman said, look, the investigation is in the first few days. It's important to let it run its course. In terms of Israel, there really hasn't been much of a backlash over the fact that the United States has essentially been spying on them and tracking their military movements, which may not come as a surprise, given that the U.S. has vast surveillance capabilities and the Israelis value their own surveillance and intelligence, obviously. In 2 pages, really haven't revealed much more than what we already knew what was going on, that the Israelis have positioned themselves to retaliate against Iran at a moment's notice. So it's not really likely to impact Israel's plans to strike Iran, but it may have been an embarrassment for the Secretary of State's visit.
Let's talk about that. What are the realistic goals of this visit?
Well, the ultimate goal, as Rami just reported, and before he left, was to try to kickstart ceasefire talks in Gaza and in Lebanon's Hezbollah while he's there. Talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He urged Israel, this is more important, or as important, to do more to protect life and to get food and aid to civilians in Gaza. A reminder, Israel's been put on a 30-day notice as of a week or so ago to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza, or the U.S. may suspend some of its military assistance, and that's important, and we haven't seen that happening. Secretary of State, as you had reported, you ran that clip, said that Sinwar's death creates an opportunity to restart those ceasefire talks. But, Netanyahu hasn't softened his language, and he made no mention in his statement to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza after their talks.
Charlie Daggett at the Pentagon, thank you.
Thank you.
The former CEO of Abercrombie Fitch accused of trafficking dozens of men for sex for nearly a decade. We talked to the BBC investigative reporter who has interviewed 12 men who described events involving sex acts for Mike Jeffries, his partner, and a third alleged recruiter. Plus, an E. coli outbreak linked to McDonald's has killed at least one person and sickened many more. What popular menu item is at the center of this? You're streaming The Daily Report.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy! It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Health officials are investigating a deadly E. coli outbreak involving McDonald's Quarter Pounder burgers. The CDC says across 10 states there have been 49 cases. 10 people have been hospitalized with 1 death. The CDC calls this a fast-moving outbreak investigation, saying investigators are trying to confirm which food ingredient is contaminated. Meanwhile, frozen waffles have been added to a growing list of food products being recalled in recent months over listeria risks. Manufacturer Treehouse Foods issued a voluntary recall of certain products last week. The affected products have been sold in Target, Walmart, Food Lion, Publix chains across the U.S. and Canada. It comes the same time as a massive Bruce Pack recall over listeria contamination. This company is recalling nearly 12 million pounds of meat and poultry, many in ready-to-eat products sold at Kroger, Wegmans, Trader Joe's, as well as some schools. Thankfully, no illnesses have been reported in connection to either recall. However, that was not the case with the Boar's Head deli meat recall over the summer. According to the CDC, the contaminated meat produced in a Virginia factory that shut down after reports of mold and other health violations has caused 10 deaths and 59 hospitalizations across 19 states. We are so happy to have Dr. Celine Gounder with us now. She is a CBS News medical contributor and the editor-at-large for public health for KFF Health News. Doctor, good to see you. The CDC says that McDonald's has pulled ingredients, that this Quarter Pounder won't be available for sale in some states. How concerning and significant is this?
Well, I do think it's important to understand that this is a multi-state outbreak. This is the result of having a highly industrialized, processed food supply, which also means that your food is getting processed at different places, at different points in time, each of which creates an opportunity for the introduction of some contaminant, whether that's E. coli or listeria or something else. And so I think all of these recent food outbreaks, contamination events, are a signal to us that we do need to be paying a bit more attention to testing in some of these facilities.
So we still don't know how it got in. We don't even know what ingredient is impacted, but we do know, how does it spread? And also, what are the risks associated?
Well, some of the preliminary reports with respect to the McDonald's Quarter Pounders is that it might be related to slivered onions in the Quarter Pounders or possibly the patties in the Quarter Pounders. And apparently they are a very specific patty that they only use in the Quarter Pounders, not in the Big Macs and the other products. And so how do you get E. coli? Well, at least in meat, when you slaughter an animal, you can have contamination from the bacteria that are in the intestines. E. coli reside in the intestines, so that's one way in which you can have that contamination occur. But also people who have not perhaps washed their hands properly, the facility, there's any number of ways you can get that kind of contamination.
I mean, it's pretty scary. Who does it fall on to protect the public from these kinds of foodborne illnesses, and does more need to be done?
Well, so there are a number of different agencies which can create some confusion, some turf issues, and so on. But in general, at the federal level, it's the FDA, the CDC, and the USDA. But then they work in collaboration with state health departments, state agricultural departments. And so it really is a number of different players, each of which might have slightly different interests at play. So it does require a lot of collaboration and transparency. One major issue, though, is when we don't fund public health as it needs to be, then there aren't enough inspectors to be going to these facilities to figure out what might be happening.
All right, that is concerning. Dr. Celine Gounder, always good to have you. Thank you. The former CEO of clothing retailer Abercrombie & Fitch has been arrested on federal sex trafficking and interstate prostitution charges. Mike Jeffries, his partner, and a third associate are accused of recruiting young men under the guise of modeling opportunities and coercing them to perform sex acts. The indictment claims the sex trafficking happened from 2008 through 2015. Our partners at BBC News reported on some of the allegations last year, and one alleged victim who filed a class action lawsuit spoke about their experience. He's part of what he told the BBC.
I was made to believe, look, this is where everybody gets their start. This is where you want to get your start. It was like he was selling fame. And the price was compliance.
Rhianna Cruxford has been following this story from London. She's an investigations correspondent for BBC News. Rhianna, thanks for being here. First, tell us more about the BBC's role in all of this. What did your investigation uncover?
So this all began with a documentary and podcast series that we released in October last year called The Abercrombie Guys. Several men came forward to say that Mike Jeffries had sexually abused them at events he hosted around the world in major cities like London, New York, Venice, and Marrakesh. We also found that Jeffries and his British partner, Matthew Smith, were at the centre of a highly organised operation involving a middleman named James Jacobson, who today was also arrested. And now these were really, really elaborate events. I spoke with a man just last month who told me that back in 2011, he was recruited for a photo shoot in Spain. And when he got there, it wasn't a photo shoot at all. Instead, Mike Jeffries had transformed an entire presidential suite of a hotel room into a literal Abercrombie store. He said it was like a movie set, and he was encouraged to engage in role play and was subsequently abused by Mike Jeffries. He felt like he was a victim in his very own sexual fantasy. We also heard about other extraordinary events, including in Marrakesh, for which I was told up to 60 men were flown in to entertain Jeffries and his friends. And now most of those men who spoke to me have been contacting me today, telling me that they are overwhelmed by news of the arrest. They are overwhelmed that they are finally being heard and that these men may now be facing justice.
I mean, the details of which we have only scratched the surface are so disturbing. How was this able to go on for so long, and why was he not arrested until Tuesday?
So the men I spoke with told me that for years they felt silenced by non-disclosure agreements that they had signed, legal documents telling them that they could be sued for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars if they spoke out, money that they all said they didn't have. On top of that, we're talking about same-sex abuse. A lot of the victims are men, a lot of whom identify as heterosexual, some of whom are gay, and they said they also felt silenced by intense feelings of shame. Now, it was only because of the BBC's reporting that this came to light last year. I understand the FBI opened an investigation following our podcast series and documentary. I can't speak to the timing of the arrest, but what we do know is that this morning they were arrested and charged with running an international sex trafficking business.
We know Jeffries' attorney has said he would respond in detail to the allegations when appropriate, but plan to do so in the courthouse, not the media. How serious are these charges, and could he potentially face charges in other countries?
So tonight, Jeffries was released on bail. He, his partner Matthew Smith, and their middleman James Jacobson are due to appear in federal court on Friday. And if convicted, they could be facing life in prison.
Has there been any response from Abercrombie and Fitch?
Abercrombie and Fitch today hasn't commented on news of the arrest, but they previously told the BBC that these allegations were abhorrent, and they emphasised to us that they have drastically transformed as a company under new leadership, very much hoping to strike a line under its past, given that Jeffries retired in 2014.
Rhianna, from your reporting, if you were across the table from somebody telling them the top lines of what you uncovered, what you think people should walk away from, what would you tell them?
This is a story about young men who had dreams to be models, dreams to make it in the fashion and entertainment industry. Too often I have heard that those dreams get crushed by predatory agents, moguls, And today we're seeing the ramifications of some of these allegations of people being heard. But really, this is a story about men speaking out, men feeling heard. So rarely do we hear allegations from men. So rarely do we hear men be vulnerable in this way. So I would really encourage people to go and listen to the podcast, to listen to their stories in their own words, and really, really reflect on what they say and the impact that this had on them.
Brianna Cruxford, thank you. A federal judge ruled Tuesday that former Trump attorney and New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has 1 week to turn over his Manhattan apartment and other luxury items to 2 Georgia election workers he defamed in 2020. Last year, Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Shay Moss, were awarded nearly $150 million after Giuliani was found liable of falsely accusing them of committing election fraud during the 2020 presidential election. The judge says Giuliani must transfer cash, jewelry, and other valuables over to Freeman and Moss to satisfy the judgment. He has previously tried to sell his New York apartment for about $6 million. Cuba's recent power problems go back further than last week's nationwide blackout. Ahead, we'll take a look at some of the core causes for the country's ongoing energy crisis and what needs to be done to solve the issue. You're streaming The Daily Report.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach. Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Here we go. Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Here are some additions to our top stories. The Justice Department has launched a webpage to help residents affected by recent hurricanes Helene and Milton vote. The site provides links to state-specific changes designed to accommodate voters facing challenges like being displaced from their homes and losing identification documents. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said confirmed presence of North Korean troops supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine would, quote, mark a significant escalation. Ukraine and South Korea have accused the North of dispatching thousands of troops. Rutte could not yet confirm this, but said there will be more information next week. President Biden hosted the Prime Minister of Slovenia at the White House Tuesday, praising him for his role in the recent seven-nation prisoner swap that brought 3 Americans home from Russia. The White House says the two leaders also discussed the war in Ukraine and energy security. The lights are turning back on in Cuba after widespread blackouts that started last week. One of the island's major power plants failed Thursday night, plunging the entire nation into darkness by Friday morning. The water supply was affected as it requires electricity to run the pumps, and food went bad in people's refrigerators. To make matters worse, Hurricane Oscar struck the island on Sunday, bringing torrential rain and killing at least 6 people. While the majority of power has been restored, the blackout is serving as a reminder of the nation's persistent energy problems. In 2021, frustration over Cuba's energy crisis contributed to the largest public demonstrations the nation had seen in decades. Similar protests broke out the following year and again earlier this spring. Christopher Hernandez-Roy joins us now. He's the Deputy Director and Senior Fellow of the Americas Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. What led to this most recent blackout, and why has this been a consistent problem for Cuba?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to join you tonight. Well, as you said at the top, their main thermoelectric plant went offline, apparently due to a spike in demand. And there was a cascade effect throughout the grid. And this happened just a few days after several weeks of rolling blackouts over the previous weeks. And the grid, as they were trying to bring it up over the weekend, it collapsed a couple of more times as they were trying to connect the eastern part of the grid with the central and western parts. The Cubans have an antiquated infrastructure which has been patched over the years, but it's never been replaced. Another problem that's contributing to this is basically they rely on oil for their electrical generation, and they're getting less of this from their ally Venezuela, which has principally been their chief source of oil, and less also from Russia and Mexico, which send lesser amounts. And as you said, the blackout is impacting hospitals, businesses, schools are closed through Wednesday, and it's affecting everybody's daily lives. And you said also that food in refrigerators is going bad. This in a country where there's widespread poverty, so people losing the little food that they have is really having a large impact.
What's being done to address these issues?
So the larger problems here is structural, and the government is trying to make up for loss of income, for bigger economic issues. Loss of income because Cuba was impacted severely by COVID, which killed its tourism industry. The tourism industry hasn't recovered. It suffered because under the Trump administration there were restrictions on remittances to the island, which were lifted by the Biden administration. It's getting less money from another major source, its medical missions abroad, which have been curtailed in recent years. So there's a tremendous lack of resources in the country. And the government's trying to address that, A, by printing more money, which is leading to inflation, but also by reducing subsidies and increasing prices on a number of things.
Has the public backlash led to any meaningful change in policy?
So the government has said it's aware that the economic issue is bad, and they've told Cubans that they're going to have to tighten their belts further. They're trying to manage it, as I said, by increasing prices and reducing subsidies. But they're not doing anything about the fundamental problem, which is a structural problem of a command economy that doesn't allow for sufficient free enterprise, and it doesn't allow for people to engage in their business pursuits.
Christopher Hernandez-Roy, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
2 weeks out from Election Day, millions of Americans are already voting in battleground states North Carolina and Georgia. Data shows early voting turnout has already broken records set during the 2020 election. And another battleground, Wisconsin, kicked off its early voting period Tuesday. Former President Barack Obama was in the Badger State to try to encourage voters to get to the polls.
Once you voted, then you have to help your friends and family make a plan to vote too. Because together we've got a chance to choose a new generation of leadership in this country and start building a better, stronger, fair, more hopeful America.
David Weigel joins me now from Madison, Wisconsin. He's a politics reporter at Semaphore. David, you've been covering politics in Wisconsin for 14 years. You were at that rally earlier between Obama and Tim Walz earlier. What do you make of the Harris campaign's deployment of them?
It was a smart move. This is the base of the Democratic vote at this point. It wasn't 14 years ago, but right now, Dane County and Madison are where these gigantic Democratic margins come from. When they've won the state, it's because they've outperformed here and gotten close to 80% of the vote. So that's what Obama was doing. That's what Walz was trying to do. They also were trying to use the event to advance a couple of messages. Walz took a harder line than I've seen before about Elon Musk advocating for Trump, giving people $1 million checks and wanting a role in the administration. So both this is the place to do it. Both Walz and Obama were using a little more economic populism, which was less on the trail yesterday when Harris was with Liz Cheney.
You know, we discussed it earlier this hour, but from what you're talking about with voters, when Trump calls Harris lazy, saying she has a low IQ, is that helping or hurting him?
I think it's background noise because the impediment for Democrats, and this is true now, it has been true for years, is that there is a large section of the country that does not care what Trump says, does not care if it's dishonest, does not care if it's offensive. Their thinking is, oh, he says those things, but he gets results. And so the voters they're trying to reach, there are some that they do believe in. These are former Republicans who don't, when they think about 4 years of that, are unhappy about it. They've been on better ground when they're offering some sort of interesting policy concession. They made some progress by talking about benefits for housing, child tax credit, home care for Medicare. There's a trap for Democrats that I've seen covering a couple of these cycles now, where Trump says something, it gets obsessive coverage in the sort of media outlets that Democrats listen and talk to, but it's not reaching any of those voters who say, because I was out with canvassers this weekend, Democratic canvassers, but their questions are not about Trump. Their questions are about, oh, I haven't heard about her policies. That's still the gap that Democrats are trying to fill.
Real quick, Trump was attacking Harris for not being on the campaign trail today. She was doing media appearances. Are those designed at getting the turnout going, or are those designed to sort of sway undecideds?
More the latter. I don't know of any voters who are going to stay on the couch unless they saw a particular Harris interview. But she has a rally speech. You can add to the rally speech. The way that you get earned media, the way you drive new attention, new attack lines, is by dealing with the media in traditional ways. Now, the Trump campaign, they sort of had it both ways here. They were demanding Harris do more interviews. They now say that the fact she's doing interviews shows that she's not campaigning. Not a lot of good faith in what they're arguing. But from the Harris campaign's perspective, they are producing clips every day of her answering questions. And what each interview is designed to do is say, imagine this person as president, and also imagine this person being reasonable. Imagine this person taking positions that you could deal with, not positions that are formulated in these Trump ads that make it sound like she's going to take your tax money and waste it, or that she's going to leave the border open and let criminals in. Each interview is meant to say, imagine this person on your TV for 4 years being credible, and contrast that with what Trump's going to offer you.
David Weigel, thank you.
Thank you.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection has confirmed previous CBS News reports that illegal border crossings have reached the lowest point of Biden's presidency. The agency's latest update shows migrant encounters were down to about 54,000 last month. That's 75% lower than in September 2023, and it's also the lowest level since August 2020. As we've been reporting, immigration is a key issue this election. Our Omar Villafranca is on a 1,690-mile journey from Texas to California along the U.S.-Mexico border. On Tuesday, he made a stop in Columbus, New Mexico, on his way to Arizona. Omar joins us now from Douglas, Arizona. Omar, you're getting places fast. What can you tell us about your travels the last 24 hours?
Well, when we went and left Texas and went into New Mexico, you were seeing big parts of what folks here call the Trump wall. Now, there was a wall here that was built by the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, but now we're seeing parts of the Trump wall. We were in Douglas, New Mexico, and we talked to two business owners there. One of them was also the mayor. He runs a motel in town. An interesting note, he told us that they, again, want more business coming in over the port. And interesting enough, he is a Republican, but he says he will be voting for Kamala Harris this time. We also talked to a business owner who said that they want more people coming in and they want elected officials to stop talking about how things are dangerous there. They say border towns are not dangerous, they are not scary, and that they feel that really affects the business and future business and people wanting to come to their border communities.
Omar Villafranca will be following your travels all this week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Still to come, in his own words, the story of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny 8 months after his death. We dive into his posthumous memoir. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The posthumous memoir of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been released 8 months after he died in prison at the age of 47. Navalny originally began writing Patriot as an autobiography in 2020 after he was poisoned, an attack many blame Russian President Vladimir Putin for, but he has denied involvement. Before Navalny could finish the manuscript, he was arrested in Russia in 2021. Navalny was an anti-corruption activist, politician, and attorney who became a prominent figure in the Russian opposition movement after Putin was re-elected in 2012. Russian officials said Navalny died of natural causes, and U.S. intelligence earlier this year said Putin probably didn't order his death. Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya, spoke to 60 Minutes correspondent Leslie Stahl about how she felt while reading her husband's memoir.
He said it was a doghouse. And this is the place where prisoners were sent to be tortured and raped and sometimes murdered. I wondered how you read those passages. I was thinking of you when I read it and thought, what is she feeling? How are you reading this?
It's a very tough moment for him to think about all these torturing places and torturing conditions, and about him, how he was laughing at these people even while he was there.
For more on this, let's bring in Alexandra Alter. She's a reporter for the New York Times who covers books. Alexandra, we have this book in front of us here. Such a fascinating, incredible read. What in there surprised you, if you can even sum it up?
Well, it's such an astonishing kind of document and piece of his legacy. But what really surprised me was to hear his voice and to see his personality and sense of humor still intact in these really horrific conditions in prison. He's such a charismatic public figure, but you really see him wrestling as a human with the fact that he's separated from his wife and children and probably will never see them again, that his entire, the cause that he's devoted his life to, Putin has imprisoned him and might end up silencing him. So it's really crushing in some ways, but it's also very inspiring. It's very funny. In one moment, he'll talk about these horrible work shifts that he's on, and the next minute, he'll joke and, make fun of the guards or talk about something funny that another inmate did. So it's astonishing to see somebody go through what he did and to remain cheerful and hopeful, really, about the future of Russia.
How do you think he was able to remain hopeful and have that humor, knowing he's going to miss his kids' graduation? He's not going to meet his grandchildren.
He talks about that in very frank terms and really wrestles with it. He says, sometimes he wants to scream, he wants to smash things. He's brought to tears at times, but he really, I think, loved what he did with his life and was willing to pay the ultimate price. And he knew when he went back to Russia that this was likely the outcome. He writes about that in the book, that decision to go from Berlin to Moscow, knowing that he would probably be arrested upon arriving, and thinking it's better for him to spend his life imprisoned in Russia, in his country, which he loved, with his fellow citizens, than as a leader in exile.
It's interesting because Yulia was asked that as well by Leslie Stahl, and her answer was basically, it wasn't for me to choose. He had made up his decision, and there was no other decision. She had also told Leslie Stahl that he was able to essentially cleverly smuggle these journal entries out via court proceedings, and that there are diary entries from the first year of imprisonment, a little bit less in the second year, and then none from that third year. I mean, is that sort of indicative that the surveillance was becoming more intense? Is that indicative of his health degrading, or just fewer court appearances?
I think it's an indicative of how difficult it became for him to write in prison. He talks about only having a pen and paper for an hour sometimes, and then it became half an hour. We can assume it became less time. They were definitely cracking down on his communications. He had fewer phone calls with family. They were reading all of his correspondence. He writes about how some of the material was actually confiscated and never returned. And Yulia told me that after his death, they didn't receive any of his belongings. So it's possible that there was a good deal more writing that he would have had published if he could have. However, he was able to continue posting on social media until shortly before his death. So he was very sort of clever about getting his communications out and staying connected with his supporters.
What happens to his political movement now?
This is a great question. I mean, the Russian opposition movement, his death has been a huge setback. He was probably their most prominent leader, certainly globally. And now many members of his organization are in exile. Many Russian opposition leaders are trying to work from exile. And his wife, Yulia, now feels the responsibility to carry on his movement. And she feels the responsibility both as the person who loved Navalny, but also as a citizen of Russia who hopes to go back one day. And she told me, it's really difficult to lead an opposition movement from exile. That was exactly the reason that he wanted to return.
Alexandra Alter with the New York Times, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
A former Iranian general and 3 others have been charged in an alleged plot to kill an Iranian-American activist in New York in 2022. An updated indictment describes the suspect as a former head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's counterintelligence department. He has also allegedly been involved in various assassination plots against journalists and other people deemed enemies of Iran. He is currently not in custody. The indictment indicates the targeted victim of the murder-for-hire scheme was Masih Alinejad, an Iranian opposition activist and journalist living in exile in New York for nearly 20 years. Alinejad was interviewed by 60 Minutes last year about Iran's threats against her. A federal judge is ordering the Army to release records related to an alleged altercation with a Trump staffer at Arlington National Cemetery by Friday. It stems from former President Donald Trump's visit to the military cemetery in August for a ceremony honoring the service members killed during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. During that visit, the Army says a cemetery employee was, quote, abruptly pushed aside after trying to enforce rules prohibiting political activity in some areas. A nonprofit watchdog group called American Oversight sued to have documents related to the incident released. Houston, we have a problem. The astronauts on SpaceX's Crew 8 mission will stay on board the International Space Station for a little longer. What's delaying their return to Earth? You're streaming the Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Having your trip home delayed by weather definitely isn't fun, especially for astronauts who've been in space for 7 months. The undocking of the Crew 8 SpaceX mission from the International Space Station was postponed again Tuesday due to unfavorable weather. The crew of 4 was initially scheduled to undock October 7th. That was delayed by Hurricane Milton. Continued inclement weather near splashdown sites off Florida's coast has prompted multiple delays over the past 2 weeks. The next window of opportunity will be Wednesday evening. LeBron James and his son Bronny are poised to make NBA history, potentially during the Los Angeles Lakers kickoff game against the Minnesota Timberwolves Tuesday night. The Jameses could be the first father-son duo to ever take the court together in a regular season game. Lakers head coach J.J. Redick said Monday, quote, nothing has been finalized, and both LeBron and Bronny will have a say when it happens, although it is expected to be early in the season. On this same day in 1976, identical twin brothers Dick and Tom Van Arsdale became the first and only pair of twins to play together for the same NBA team, the Phoenix Suns. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. McDonald's is at the center of a deadly E. coli outbreak, the main ingredient that may be linked to the cases and how the company is responding. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits the Middle East as the FBI launches an investigation into the leak of classified documents purportedly outlining Israel's plans to attack Iran. We'll have more on the state of the conflict. And the former CEO of Abercrombie Fitch faces sex trafficking charges. We'll break down what's inside the new indictment. You're streaming CBS News.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean? Did any of that make sense? What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Is it good? Mm-hmm. Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger?